So are we clear that, okay, Mission Jackfruit 365 is good to sustain health? Are we clear Mission Jackfruit 365 is good to sustain farmers' wealth? So jackfruit tree on the hill slopes can prevent landslides. In the short time, if I could pass on 3 messages, one is about sustaining human health from invisible fat, a fat which you cannot pinch and feel, that is the invisible fat. Number 2, sustaining farmers' wealth in Kerala. Number 3, sustaining Kerala from cloudbursts. Which one do you prefer more? Sustaining human health from invisible fat? Raise your hands. Okay, that's important. Sustaining farmers' wealth. Okay. Sustaining Kerala from cloudburst. Okay, this is going to be equal. Okay, so I have to make sure I cover all 3, but I'll do the first 2 and take questions, and then we'll come to the number 3. Okay, so sustaining human health from invisible fat. In fact, my journey into jackfruit was from the former Principal Secretary for Industries, Sri P.H. Kurian. Okay, and in fact, we have the current Principal Secretary for Industries as the next speaker here. Okay, so I took a year off from Microsoft to write a book about coming back to India and working for Microsoft from Kerala. And at the time, Sri P.H. Kurian was the IT Secretary of Kerala, and I was the Microsoft's ambassador for Kerala. So that's how I know him. Okay, so I took a year off to write a book, and then while I was writing the book, I could see a jackfruit tree from my window. And that one fruit started getting bigger and bigger and was about to fall off from the tree. Okay, to save that one fruit, I started Jackfruit365 for 1 year. It was only a 1-year campaign to rebrand jackfruit so that Malayali starts eating chakka again. That was the only objective. And Sri P.H. Kurian told me, James, it's been for the last 10 years, I have spent 15 lakhs to create an organized market for jackfruit, and I've been unsuccessful. Okay, if there is anything you can do, it will be a great boon for Kerala farmers. That is how it all started. I was like, I'll give it 1 year. Okay, but then by the end of the year, another big intervention happened, Dr. Kalam. Okay, and that is when we found out that, okay, the unripe jackfruit meal or chakkapuruk of Kerala is better than rice for diabetes. And that chance discovery, when my book got published, the first copy was given Dr. Kalam, and there I had this conversation with him about chakkapuruk versus rice for diabetes. And he gave me the biggest inspirational ask, James, find a way to add this to what people like to eat. A high fiber meal always translates to low absorption of sugar. Okay, so you must find a way to add the unripe jackfruit of Kerala into what rest of India like to eat. North India likes to eat roti, South India likes to eat idli dosa. So getting jackfruit into the idli dosa and roti was the engineering challenge which I had. It took me 18 months to find a flour with a binding factor between rice flour and wheat flour. It took 2 patents as well. One for the product to get a nutritional value where the binding factor is between rice flour and wheat flour, and then also a machine to make sure every pack has the same value. A standardized, because jackfruit is a fast ripening fruit. As you cut, the sugar value goes up. So to make sure the sugar value is low and the soluble fiber value is high, I needed a machine. So that is how we cracked the green jackfruit flour, which every pack has the same nutritional value. Okay, once we got that standardized, then it was easy for us to do clinical trials. So that is where I come to the health. So we started off with the diabetes. We did a double-blind placebo-controlled randomized controlled trial on a government medical college and gave it to type 2 diabetes patients for 90 days and demonstrated the average blood sugar level HbA1c came down. And I presented that at the American Diabetes Association's conference. So from an engineer from CET, I have presented scientific evidence at the American Diabetes Associations in Chicago, and later on, last year, at the American Society for Nutrition conference about how this reverses fatty liver. Okay, now once we learned about the diabetes impact, that is when the product was launched and we won the National Startup Award, and I had a 2 minutes interaction with the Prime Minister. That is what made Jackfruit365 viral and became a bestseller on Amazon with now 13,000 reviews. Okay. But once people started using it for controlling blood sugar, we started hearing more evidence of other benefits. And that is where the secret of this invisible fat comes in. All of us think that, okay, gaining weight, being fat is a sign of unhealthiness. But there are a lot more people who are fit, looking healthy, but they have a lot of invisible fat or the visceral fat which is hiding in their organs. Your liver, your pancreas, intestines. And these visceral fat actually trigger for many inflammatory diseases, starting from fatty liver, diabetes, PCOS, PCOD, irritable bowel syndrome. So all, in fact, 80% of people, as per the ICMR study, 80% of the people in India have one of the lifestyle diseases triggered from the visceral fat or the invisible fat. Okay, so 80% adults in India have one lifestyle disease which is linked to the invisible fat. Now, what is the link between jackfruit and the invisible fat? So when we learned about the benefits of diabetes, it is the pancreatic fat which actually causes diabetes. And I had a discussion with Professor Roy Taylor of Newcastle University, who actually is the first one to prove type 2 diabetes can be reversed through food, through a very low calorie diet. So I had a meeting with him in Kollam when he came to present at the Endocrine Society for India conference. And I walked him through the data I am seeing on diabetes. And he told me, James, it is very hard to measure pancreatic fat. But before the fat gets to pancreas, it gets stored in the largest organ inside our body, the liver. Keep an eye on the liver fat. If liver fat is coming down, you're on the path of reversal on diabetes too. So that is how I learned that liver fat is actually a precondition to diabetes. And how many of us have at least one person in our family with an ultrasound report which says they have fatty liver? How many of us are? Okay. So, and this is my line, okay. So, you could do an ultrasound and then everybody sings ultrasound adhyamai and the fatty liver sondamaki, and we don't do anything, right? That's it. Okay. So, we then did a study on fatty liver at JSS Medical College, Mysore, and we could demonstrate that, okay, the fatty liver is coming down because one doctor in Ahmedabad has got more than 200 patients who have reversed fatty liver with Jackfruit365. So to confirm that, we put it to a clinical trial, and that is when we found out whole visceral fat is coming down, inflammatory markers is coming down, triglycerides is coming down. Okay, so that is how the jackfruit flour, the soluble fiber in the jackfruit flour which I use for the binding, is actually reversing visceral fat, reducing visceral fat. So all metabolic condition markers are coming down. So it is to do with the specific soluble fiber in the jackfruit flour, which becomes a feed for the gut microbiome and then triggers the visceral fat decrease in our body. So the soluble fiber in the jackfruit flour is actually reducing the visceral fat or the invisible fat in our body, and that is how all these metabolic markers are coming down. Okay, that I gave a talk at the TEDx talk, so that again went viral. So we could we have now customer in 5,000 pin codes in India through Amazon. Okay, we have 13,000 reviews. It takes close to 1 million people to get 13,000 reviews. But then one of the impact funds. So are you clear that, okay, this jackfruit has a potential to sustain our health? Are we clear on that? And I'll give you one specific examples. And I told you about, say, PH Kurian, IAS, was the Principal Secretary for Industries, who actually got me the seed fund from KSIDC to start Jackfruit365. And then later he retired as the Additional Chief Secretary of Kerala. So when my TEDx talk went viral, he called me to say, James, for the last 10 years I have fatty liver, but for the last 2 years it has progressed to grade 2 fatty liver. I said, and I'm concerned about it. I said, I'm going to send you 2 packs. You figure out a way to consume that in 1 month. And then it will come to your home every month. Okay? So, to my urge, what he did was he started, and he took a unique way of taking it. Every morning he goes for a walk, comes back home. He adds 3 tablespoons of Jackfruit365 flour into hot water and allow it to cool. and then he had 2 tablespoons of curd and 1 tablespoon of grated coconut, bit of salt, and takes it like a porridge every morning. After 3 months, he went for his liver function test. So the liver function test markers started coming down. That's progress. 3 months later, after 6 months, he went for his ultrasound, and he called me from the ultrasound table. He said, James, the doctor is saying, I have no fatty liver. So from grade 2 to nil in 6 months. That is the power of the soluble fiber in the jackfruit. Is that impressive? Okay, so grade 2 fatty liver reversed to nil in 6 months, when we have got the clinical data and we have got real life people talking about that. Okay, that's one. Are we good? So the point number 1, sustainable health by removing invisible fat. Number 2, farmers' wealth. Kerala produces 3 million metric tons of fruits in a year. 3 million metric tons of fruits in a year. 1.43 million metric tons is one fruit. Out of the 3, that's 47% of total fruit production in kg in Kerala is one fruit. Jackfruit. What happens to that fruit now? It just drops off from the tree, right? How do we convert that to farmers' wealth? In the last season, I made an experiment. I gave the task to a panchayat president. Said, okay, I will buy the jackfruit from you, provided you source it only from your panchayat. And we sourced 530 tons of jackfruit from that one panchayat. That is more than half of that entire panchayat's fruit production. Okay, so we have converted the jackfruit which were going waste from that one panchayat into farmers' wealth. It's because of the scientific evidence which we have done. Okay, we have proved it is good for diabetes, we have proved it's good for fatty liver. That is the reason I keep on investing in scientific research, because that is the only thing which matters for people to start consuming the jackfruit flour. Okay, so I keep on investing in studies. There are a couple of studies going on right now. So that is how we proved this is good for health. Because I'll give you one famous statement. One of the Tycoon CEOs told me. Okay, if 1 in 100 people cares about the falling jackfruits in Kerala, 1 in 3 people in Kerala worries about fatty liver and diabetes. So if jackfruit is good for fatty liver and diabetes, that is the best way to get farmers' wealth. Okay, because you're helping somebody to improve their health. In the process, I'm able to get jackfruit from the farmers and give it to the people who really need help. Okay, so are we clear that, okay, Mission Jackfruit365 is good to sustain health? Are we clear Mission Jackfruit365 is good to sustain farmers' wealth? Okay, so 2 things we have covered. Now let's talk about the third one. Cloudburst. And I'll tell you, I have to assess risk in my business. Now one of the risks was, as you know, as soon as monsoon arrives, the very first day of rain, the jackfruit tastes different, correct? Very first day, because the water gets into the fruit. And we all think it is from the rain, right? The rain, the water gets into the fruit, that is why the taste goes down. And if that is true, I have a risk in my business, because I pay by kg, I pay by weight. So when the water gets in, the weight goes up for the same fruit. Okay, so my suppliers have an incentive to increase the weight, right? Because I'm paying them by weight. So if they go dip it in the water, the weight will increase. I will pay more and I have to spend more money in dehydrating. So it was a huge risk for my business. So we had to verify, is the water getting inside if you dip it? The water doesn't. The water doesn't enter the fruit if you dip the whole fruit in water. Then how is the water coming in within 1 day? If it is not from the rainwater, that tree is strange. The jackfruit tree is like having a submersible pump underneath to pump water up through the trunk into the fruit in the shortest possible time. It's like an always on submersible 100 HP pump under the ground trying to suck water up. Okay, it's like a water tank. So we had to then measure which part of the jackfruit gets the moisture first. It is the core. So the water gets from the trunk into the core and then spreads to the fruit. So the core increases moisture level the maximum, which means it is actually pumping water up within 1 day and gets inside the fruit, and that is why the fruit taste changes. Now what happens during cloudburst? The soil gets soaked in water and it gives away, right? That is how the landslide happens. Okay. Now what is the difference between the rubber tree and the jackfruit tree? The deep tap roots and the roots are 20 feet wide. That is why we don't put the jackfruit tree next to the house. They go wide and deep. So they hold the soil but also pumps the water up from a wider area. So it holds the soil and pumps the water up, and during summer it gives it back to the soil. That is why the wells around the jackfruit trees always have water. Okay, during the rainy season it pulls the water up and then it puts it back. Okay, so jackfruit tree on the hill slopes can prevent landslides. But for all of this to happen, I mean, the farmers are ready to replant rubber tree with jackfruit plants. But selling on Amazon is not enough. Okay, so we have to make sure. In fact, I've been lucky that one of my early supporters, Elias George, was the Kochi Metro founding CEO. So he was one of my first supporter on the jackfruit campaign, and he came on the ad during 2018 when Kerala declared jackfruit as the official fruit of Kerala. And that time every vegetable shop was selling chakka, sliced chakka. Okay, so we need to have the chakka coming back to every vegetable shop. So there has to be a massive campaign if our goal is to sustain human health, sustain farmers' wealth, and sustain Kerala from cloudburst. One venture cannot do that. The whole Kerala needs to start working towards that, so that every vegetable shop converts this 47% of fruit produced in Kerala into the hands, into the plate, everyday plate of Kerala. That is when we can actually convert every jackfruit in Kerala into farmers' wealth and Malayalis' health. Thank you.